I'm not an expert on pensions at all. I'm not an expert that I don't even have a pension. And so you can disregard everything I say if you want to. Because I'm not an expert, I just want to talk about some of the big political issues around pensions so we can think about how we move to a system where at least someone pays for our pensions, and hopefully someone pays for mine, because I think there are big political issues we have to address if we want to unlock a kind of secure future for all. And there are just 4 quick things I want to talk about. First, I want to talk about wages. The fact that we live in a society where the economic system wants to kind of drive down wages, and pensions are just obviously deferred wages. So we live in a system where economic efficiency is derived by ensuring that we have as little money as possible to invest in our in our retirement, and that's a problem and something we have to do something about. And clearly that's operating in the public sector at the moment, where the view is that public sector workers are somehow feather-bedded, that there isn't a kind of, it isn't right and proper that people are paid enough in terms of deferred wages and get a decent pension at the end of it. And we have to change that around and have good work, well-paid work, and therefore well-paid pensions. And I think we have to do something substantial about that. And the public sector thing links to my second point, really, is about the nature of the state itself. Because we've lived in an era where public sector state activity is deemed to be bad, and private sector individual action is deemed to have been good. And so we've gone through a process, particularly with pensions, where people have been encouraged to opt out, to choose, to individualise. Because if you opt out, choose and individualise, you will all make much better individual choices about your future and make better investments, because it isn't someone else doing it for you, the sloppy, lazy, bureaucratic state. Now that's proved to be absolute rubbish, and unless we change that round, and have a state which is viewed as something which is efficient, effective, accountable, productive, etc., then I don't think we're ever going to be in a position where we're going to have a system of state provision of pensions which is going to be effective. Because pensions, like a whole lot of our life, are really a kind of utility function. We need them to exist. And the market is not very good at providing utility type functions, electricity, gas, water, the things that are essential about life, and clearly pensions is part of that. So we need to ensure that the state has the legitimacy, the ability, the capacity to provide collective solutions, and has the kind of authority. Because the thing about pensions is that we need to get into a sort of an era of kind of progressive paternalism, if you like. People are never going to, I'll just touch on this at the end, people are never going to be that willing to kind of save now for later. Sometimes you need an institution and an organisation that makes you do things that are in your own best interests. You might grumble about it, but actually secretly in the back of your mind you're very grateful that the state is operating to take money away from you now, which you wouldn't voluntarily invest now, and be there for later life. And we need a state that has the legitimacy to do that, instead of the rip-off private sector, which is always there just to make as much profit as it can and not look after us. And the third big point to me about trying to change the context in which we can have proper pensions provision is to have a kind of rebalancing of our society and our lives. Because our lives now, to me, are made up of the consumption kind of culture, the consumer society. We want things now. If it isn't now, we're not interested in it. And pensions are of course about later, deferred gratification. If you want an emblem of this world, these times, it's the credit card. You borrow to spend now and don't worry about the consequences. If you want an emblem or a symbol of our kind of previous generation, it was the savings book, the place in which you kind of invested money every week and ticked it off and gradually built up the right in order to spend later. And I think we need to kind of a rebalancing of our lives so that we're prepared to forego something now in order to have greater security later. My final point, and Sue touched on this, is that we talk about the notion of the good society. Instead of starting from a conversation now about where we're at, let's try and think about what kind of world that we want to create. What kind of human life do we want to have? What matters to us really? What really counts? And if you think about that, then you can begin to work backwards and work out what kind of economic, financial, savings and pension systems will give us that. Over the last week, I've had an email conversation with Philip Gould, who was the long-term pollster for New Labour, who's dying of cancer. And he was a friend of mine, and we went out different ways slightly politically, and it's been really interesting touching base and talking with him again. And what Philip tells us, and what we know, is that when we die, we don't look back on our lives and think, well, you know, what did we want? We wanted another television, or we wanted to put a conservatory on our house, or we wanted a new car. When we die, as Philip is doing now, you look back and think about what really matters to you. You know, and what matters to us is the people that we love, about having more time to spend with the people that we love, and doing the things that we really enjoy, and not just spending stuff. And I think when we think about that kind of life, about love, care, compassion, cooperation, time, all of those kinds of issues, I think we should begin to think about, you know, what's the sort of structure of our lives which gives us the ability to live the kind of life that we want to, and how can we ensure that we have an economic, financial and savings system which clears the ground so that, you know, instead of just consuming everything now and worrying about that and then dying and looking back and thinking I didn't live a good life in a good society, we create the kind of conditions so that, you know, we can have a pension which gives us the kind of time to do the sorts of things that we want to do and have the relationships and life that we want to have. If we do some of those big things, I think some of the experts that you've got on the panel could begin to work out how do we structure things in a way which would work to give us that kind of life and that kind of society.
Thank you.